So the controls have changed. Basically, one of my friends that played it said, "Oh, I wish I could tap anywhere to shoot." Guys who this is basically like a sort of like for right-handed people because this is, for me, I feel more comfortable aiming with my right hand and then tapping with my left because my right hand is more accurate. So the input was pretty important. And one of my friends said, "Hey, you should be able to tap anywhere, and it can shoot." So I thought, great, that sounds like a good idea. I don't know if it's possible. It should be. Um, so that's what we kind of set out to do. So if I go to this crosshairs script, which is this one here, now there's been a lot of changes and there's a lot of blue here, as you can see, which is commented out. And I can actually just delete that now because I don't need it. I always feel nervous when I delete code. Eesh, commented code. But I'm just going to delete that on camera. It's official. I'm going to leave that one in, and I'm just going to delete this as well. Just so it's a little bit clearer for me to read and also for you guys. And feel free to use this code, of course. There's no problem with that. Or this is open to be shared. So, like this is where the input is handled, say on the iPhone. But the touch count, the input is also for Android as well. You don't have to separate the Android and iPhone touch function calls inside of the code. It's both related to iPhone and Android. So what I've basically said here is for every touch is do a raycast, which is like the laser that gets shot into the game world whenever a player taps on the screen. If that laser or that raycast hits something, if that ray hits something, then we want to process this code here. That's what this if statement is. It says if it hit anything in the game world, a collider or basically a collider will detect a raycast. If any of that happens, then do all this stuff here. So the first thing is I was trying to figure out, like before, was how can I get it to the crosshairs to move and then also have a tap anywhere on the screen and not have that interfere. So what was happening was originally I was moving it around, but when I tapped like this, say or if I had one thumb to move the crosshairs and then one thumb anywhere on the screen to fire, the crosshair would move to that point very quickly. And so what I needed to do is separate out the tap and the movement to move the finger input to move the crosshairs. So what we did here is basically we've said if the touch is a move touch, basically if the player is moving the finger around the screen, then if there's only one touch on the screen, then basically we want to move the crosshairs to that position. So that's if it was only touched once. If it's a second touch, then this code won't be used. The reason for that was if there was a second touch and the second touch moved slightly, then this code would get triggered, and then that crosshair would move slightly once you touch the second area. So that was a bit of a problem. But this is solved by this part here, this input.touch count. Any of you guys who are handling multiple touch input on iPhone or Android using Unity, please, if you have any questions, drop us a comment or a message, and we'll try to help you with this, because I remember first time going into the multiple touch sort of code, it was a little bit confusing, but I've kind of gotten used to this stuff now. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. So this code here, this moves the crosshairs around the screen. This second part here is saying if it's a touch phase dot began, like if it's the first time that the player taps on the screen, then basically fire a bullet. That's all doing. If it's not reloading, then fire a bullet. So that made the input a little bit more easy. Like you can tap anywhere. But the problem was that it actually made the input a little bit more less intuitive, a little bit more confusing for players who are just coming into the game. So what I found was that people were basically, what they were doing was like this. They were moving the crosshairs like this to sort of get the crosshair over a guy. That made sense. The crosshairs, everyone knows what crosshairs are, and they it's a gun and they shoot bullets. But when they were doing that, they were stopping and then tapping again. But what they were doing, some people were tapping on the character, the bad guys, and what that does is, because the crosshairs are actually moving, the crosshairs are here above the tap. That's because you don't want your finger to be exactly on the crosshairs, because you'd be covering up the screen and you wouldn't be able to see what's happening. But it was interesting because people were doing this and then tapping, and then the crosshairs would be going to a different position because they were trying to tap on the character. Some people got it after a while. They were sort of like, oh yeah, I've got to tap where the crosshairs, where my finger was originally, and then I can do that. But eventually, it took like a minute or so to people understand that you can move it and tap with a separate finger. But 1 minute is too long, and some people might not get it. They might continue to have use the wrong way for the input in the game. And it's always interesting for a developer to see that, because it's like partly frustrating, because it's like, oh, god damn it, guys, you're supposed to do it this way, don't you get it? But at the same time, it's like, no, that's our mistake. That's something that we've got to fix. We've got to make it clear. And as you guys who are out there who are fellow developers who have done this, you probably know that if it's a game where people are not very familiar with it, say like Angry Birds. Everyone knows how to play Angry Birds now. You drag the bird and that's it. And it's very, very intuitive and it's very obvious. For those games that are kind of new, it has to be so easy to get into the game, unless it's like a type of, say, strategy game that requires a lot of learning, which is fine and people accept that. But for a quick, casual game, the types of games that I played over the course of a few minutes, you have to get into the game very, very fast. So, that's basically why these instructions came along here. So I've wrote the text, but I've also done an example. So it pops up saying, use one finger to move the crosshairs, and use another finger to tap to shoot. You'll be surprised how many people never, ever, ever read that. So you've got to be visual, and it's got to be text-based as well. Some would argue against that. Another way to do it would be for people to actually follow the tutorial, and you have to do the tutorial first. So the tutorial might be, number one, hey, move the crosshairs. Okay, great. Ding, big tick pops up. Okay, tap to shoot. Ding, great. And then move into the game. That might have been a better way to do it, but we'll see. I think that, give us some feedback, everyone. If you're finding that if the input was not clear to you first time, please let me know, because I think that's really good feedback, and it's something good for us to talk about on the developer diary videos. So let me just check. Sorry, I've just opened that by accident. You'll see I've just tapped on my Xcode project by accident. So remove the fire button. The other thing is that this is actually what you're seeing now inside of Unity is the Android version. So if I go to, let me just go back. So let's go back to the main menu. Okay, click play. Now you notice that this is the story screen, but then it goes, and then it skips the shop screen. Okay. Now in the iPhone version, as you've seen before on the previous videos, you can buy the guns. Like we've got 3 separate guns, and the first one is free. On Android, the 2 markets that we've just published to, as in yesterday, the 20th of May 2012, we don't have the ability to do in-app purchases right now. Now those markets do have it. There's slideme.org and the opera.apps markets, and I'll put the links down below. We don't have the SDK integrated into Unity to do in-app purchases, and in-app purchases, as hopefully most of you know, is where the game is free, usually free, and you can buy something in the game. So with us, you can buy the bigger guns, the guns that give you 10 rounds, and the guns that give you 20 rounds with the sniper scope. So what we decided to do on the Android version for those 2 markets was basically to just remove the in-app purchases and just let people, it's still free, same as the iPhone, and we'll just keep the ads in the game down at the bottom here. Now that might change if we can integrate the SDK for those markets, but most likely for Android what we'll have is the Amazon App Store is we'll integrate the in-app purchase system for that app store, and I'll do a video on that one as well as I'm doing it. That will hopefully be in the next few days. And also for the Google Play market as well. Once we're back on Google Play, we can have in-app billing inside of Google Play, no problem. And that'll hopefully be available in the next couple of weeks, and I'll do a video on that one as well. So if anyone's interested in knowing how to do in-app purchases, like, please drop a comment and we'll focus a specific set of tutorial videos on that section as well, because I think that's a little bit complicated how to do it, because it involves communication between the Google Play market or the Amazon App Store or the iPhone App Store, and then having event calls inside of the game and then saying, hey, purchase successful or purchase failed, and then what do you do based on those events? So yeah, so just FYI, for this current version on May 21st from those two markets, the guns are not available. It's just this basic gun which gives you 10 rounds of ammo, but the minigun as well. And I'm going to mention that right now actually. The minigun, let me just show you what that does. I'm going to bring this up here. It's actually called machine gun here. Let me just set this score to 1. So what I found was during the play testing was that shooting these guys was the fun part, obviously, you know, and shooting a lot of them was the fun part. And so I didn't want to limit. You noticed before we only had 2 rounds of ammo for this basic gun, but now we've got 5, and that's because reloading after every 2 shots was just, it felt like it was stopping the fun. You know, it didn't feel right. We wanted to tap, 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 and shoot, 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 and blow these things to bits, which is the fun part. You know, having them shout and scream and, you know, sort of blowing off the hats or the crotches or whatever was the fun part. And so I wanted to do a bit of a weapon which is like a bonus weapon that appears, and this is what this minigun is. So I'm just going to let a bunch of guys appear here, and then I'm going to show you this minigun. Alright, so that'll do. Tap on it. And it's an automatic 10-second fire minigun, so like a minigun is like a big machine gun like Arnie uses in Terminator 2. And that's kind of cool. So the idea with that is, it felt like good fun just to blow these things apart and have them all spray up and body parts flying everywhere and you know, people shouting and screaming. And that's kind of the idea was that when there's too many guys and they get over here, you use the minigun and then start to blow them to bits, and it's really good fun to sort of smash all of these bad guys into pieces when there's a lot of them. The reason that I chose it in the middle here was because when it was up here on the right hand side originally, is that people didn't seem to respond to it very well. Or they didn't notice it. You know, there's so much going on the screen. There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of bodies, and this minigun icon is also red. So I actually put it in the middle here, and it doesn't affect gameplay too much. But hopefully, the goal is that people would accidentally click on it. You know, they'll shoot it, and then they'll get to use it, and they'll think, oh right, oh that's what it does. You know, next time I know, and therefore I can you know, strategically play it next time. I.e., I don't just use it straight away. I use it when the flood of guys is getting too much, and I need this gun to blow them to bits. So let me just go back and change this again. It's when it reaches 5,000 points.